Hi, welcome everyone to Coleman Report Live, May 6th edition. Today we have a very special guest back on the show, Mr. Lance Sexton, Coleman faculty member. How you doing, Lance? Welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be back. Like everyone else on this call, I was just buried into the PPP program, Joe.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We know you're busy. Let's first off, let's get into this poll question. Have you stopped accepting PPP loan applications?
Hey, that's a great question, Joe, because I think a number of people may have stopped and maybe turning it back on because we were talking about it before the show, Joe. Last week they were talking about 175 had been spent, and now they're saying it's only at like 181, 182, something like that. So there's still plenty of money available.
28%, yes, they've stopped. So let's talk about the numbers, Katie. This was released this morning.
Right. Like Lance was saying, it's only about a $6 billion difference from what we were seeing over the weekend. So either it's stopped or it's slowing down. We are seeing that a lot of banks are doing much smaller loans this round, which is what we were kind of talking about before the show. You're seeing the smallest of small businesses applying for these loans. And even last week, we heard some of the banks were doing tiny loans, $5,000 for one of them just to pay the payroll for a couple employees, and that's it. So it's really getting used for those smaller businesses, which is great.
Katie and Joe, I was talking to a fellow banker, and we were talking about the difference between 1 and 2, and Katie's right on point. Round 1 was populated with a lot of larger, more sophisticated small businesses who may have had accountants or CFOs on staff. Definitely had CPAs that worked with them, so you saw bigger, better documented applications. Round 2 has a lot of sole proprietors, 1099 contract employees, and Katie, you're right. The smallest app is $1,000, and the bank I talked to said they had seen quite a number of $1,000 applications.
Lance, the $2 million and over loans are going to be scrutinized very carefully, correct? That's what the agency is telling everyone.
We were all talking about this before the show. Nobody really knows what forgiveness looks like yet. I mean, we have some basic parameters. We're all looking for guidance from SBA and the Treasury on forgiveness and how that's going to work. Hopefully it'll be a form, but the loans that are $2 million and up are going to be reviewed, and those may have more stringent requirements in terms of documentation. I think every bank in the country is anxiously anticipating what forgiveness looks like, what documentation is going to be required, and goodness gracious, guys, who is going to be responsible for the documenting forgiveness? It sounds like we are, the banks.
Mm-hmm. Katie, let's talk about what the Senate is trying to do and what Rubio did.
Right. So yesterday, the Senate was trying to pass some more oversight for the PPP program, and Senator Rubio ended up blocking that yesterday, really on the grounds that he was saying that that's going to overburden the agency, and it's going to make it unnecessarily difficult, not for the administrator and Treasury, but for all those people who are working from home having to do this oversight and having to manage it. And so really he was saying that it's just going to end up slowing down the program and hurting small businesses and smaller banks and things like that more than it's going to help with additional oversight. He's saying this is working well right now. We're not seeing these huge loans or these suspicious loans as much anymore, so we don't really necessarily need additional oversight at this time.
We have a new interim final rule as well this morning. What are they talking about? I think it's some more clarification on churches and affiliation, right?
Right, so
Yeah.
it is on the churches are part of it. It's really on the non-discrimination. Most of it's based on sex discrimination, and it goes into details about how you still have to follow the same rules and regulations that are and exemptions that are in our statutory and regulatory rules at this time. So you're looking at the federal regulations and things, including for schools, housing, and adoption agencies. But that does not bar religious entities from choosing who they're employing and who they're working with for that. The other part of this new interim final rule is for student workers, and they do count, or generally they do count, toward the number of employees you have on for your PPP loan. However, there are some exemptions, such as if they are on federal work study. So just kind of look into that and make sure there's also some exemptions if it's a very small school or things like that too. So.
Very good. Lance, they issued a couple more FAQs for some more guidance on the repayment date. What are you seeing? So SBA is extending the repayment date to May 14th.
I haven't seen this yet, guys, so I'm taking a look at it. Oh, well, they're just saying if you got a PPP loan, you feel like you shouldn't have gotten it. You can repay it by the middle part of May 14th, and not have any repercussions as a result of it. And I'll say the same thing that I've said over and over again, because my friends know that I'm working on the PPP loan program, and everybody was pretty harsh to these bigger companies, but the bigger companies did not break the rules. They followed the rules. Now, should they have gotten a PPP loan? Probably not. But the PPP programs, like a lot of things that get rushed out to the market, I don't think the Treasury or SBA thought about, okay, if we relax affiliation on hospitality, what's going to happen? And quite honestly, guys, PPP is intended to put employees back to work. And so, I mean, they did relax some of the rules. Now, most of those companies that got beat up in the press did give the money back. But round two, and you said this earlier, Joe, round two, I don't think there's going to be any issues. There are a lot smaller loans, significantly fewer large projects. I did see some statistics that talked about there were a few, but the banks that I've talked to have seen very few, if any, larger PPP apps.
A question that just came in on the repayment of loans, safe harbor period. Have you heard anyone discuss what banks are doing with the interest accrual?
Interest accrual on the loans that'll be repaid back.
Mm-hmm.
I have not heard a thing. My idea is if somebody inadvertently got a PPP loan, and I'm going to use inadvertent because they did follow the rules, but if they inadvertently got a PPP loan and they've been encouraged by the Treasury to repay it, or they determine they should repay it, I don't think they're going to try to collect that 1% interest on that.
Yeah. Let's talk about foreign employees. Did you have to do any of these with workers overseas?
I did, so I really wouldn't be able to speak to that. I think what they're talking about is U.S. companies that have employees working and living in other countries, and this helps to clarify, the determination of the number of employees. Now, guys, I see the stats. My discussion with banks across the country, a majority of applications do not have 500 employees, so it doesn't become an issue. And most have U.S.-based employees, but this helps to clarify the counting of employees and making a determination of eligibility. But one thing to remember, every FAQ talks about the determination of affiliation and eligibility, most of that falls back on the borrower, not the bank.
Are 501c6 entities still ineligible for the program as nonprofits not recognized as 501c3s?
Joe, I don't really have an answer to that question. I know the 501c3s are eligible.
Yeah.
I've not had a project on a 501c6.
Have you heard of any banks not getting the payments on the current SBA loans, the debt relief?
Now, Joe, this is just my discussion with other banks and friends of mine throughout the country.
Yeah.
Most of the banks got their money on April 29th. You know, those that had loans, for instance, let's say you had a loan that had a payment due March 28th and they had one due April 28th. In that situation, they probably got two payments in one form, but most banks that I have talked to got their payment money on April 29th. Now, there may be some circumstances if you did not get it, make sure you check with Coleman and see if there was a problem. And if you did not get the money on April 29th, you'll want to report on your next report due by May the 10th and request two payments on each one.
Well, awesome stuff, Lance. We have published the franchise reports and order them. Just send me an email if you want them. Lance, I'll send over your copy. I know you use that frequently for your underwriting purposes. We're going to be launching a couple webinars. Go ahead, Lance.
I hated to interrupt, Joe, but I have used the Coleman report, NAICS report for PPP processing because sometimes the ETRAN link for NAICS code has gotten bogged down probably because of these big batches. So I keep the Coleman NAICS report over on a separate screen, and I can go do a Control F and type in the type of business it is, and I get the NAICS code, and I don't have to wait on the SBA's link.
Awesome. Well, we love having you back on the program. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. We're going to be featuring our frequent guest, John Riosty, the American Banker reporter. So he's got some fun stuff to talk about. Katie, as always, we appreciate everything you do. And Lance, welcome back. We look forward to having you on the rest of the week, okay? Everyone have a good day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Thank you.